this edition of I Escaped, a death-defying breakout.
There was sort of this Houdini-type quality about him where people were almost cheering him on.
And a sleepy village is under siege by 3 murderous criminals.
To break out of Parkhurst, you need a lot of planning, you need a lot of resources, and you need a lot of luck.
Around the world, there are over 9 million prisoners behind bars. These are the stories of the few who dared to break out. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, 2003, Luzerne County Correctional Facility. This towering 7-story jail is housing hundreds of hardened criminals. Authorities believe that the higher the cell, the tougher it would be to escape. On the top floor, 30-year-old bank robber, drug dealer, and alleged serial killer Hugo Selinski has set his mind on beating the odds.
So you shot these people?
Selinski was charged with multiple counts of murder after police received a gruesome tip-off from an informant.
As a result of executing that search warrant, we recovered the remains of 5 individuals.
The bodies are found on Selinski's property.
We found the charred remains of 3 individuals, along with the buried remains of 2 other individuals.
Police believe they were killed by Selinski over drug deals gone wrong.
They know 5 definitely, but because of all the bones that they found, mashed up, beaten in the fire pit, it could be as many as 13 people. They couldn't reconfigure all the bodies back together because the bones were so mutilated.
Incarcerated while awaiting his trial, Selinski immediately discovers a damaged window in an unused cell and gets to work.
What he did is pry around the edges of a metal screen, which was bolted into a window. He loosened enough space around it. He then got a bed sheet and looped the bed sheet through the opening that he had made. He then used a broom handle in a tourniquet fashion to tighten the tension. The bed sheets held, and the tension was enough where it pulled the metal screen off the wall.
With freedom in sight, Selinski still needs a way to reach the ground 100 feet below. So over the next 3 days, he gets a hold of 11 bed sheets and makes a rope.
He had no way to test the strength of his bed sheet rope as to whether it would hold his 170 pounds or not.
I think looking back, he may have realized how dangerous that really was, and that, you know, that could have been the end of his life.
Strapping a thin mattress around his back, alleged serial killer Hugo Selinski takes his life in his hands. Like a human Spider-Man, Selinski makes it to the end of the rope, only to discover that it's too short.
The rope didn't quite make it down to the ledge, so he now had to jump an additional 10 or 12 feet to actually land on the ledge. The one thing you could say about Mr. Selinski's personality is that he is absolutely fearless.
Selinski then uses a mattress he'd carried.
He threw it on top of the razor wire fence, which was a good 10 or 12 feet up.
He runs along the ledge and, using an air conditioning duct as a springboard, leaps toward the razor wire. Cushioned by the mattress, he's catapulted to freedom on the other side.
I was stunned. When I heard the circumstances surrounding the incident, it was like something you would read in a novel.
Meanwhile, up above, fellow inmate Scott Bolton watches Hugo's every move. Bolton makes a spur-of-the-moment decision and decides to follow suit. But Scott loses his grip exiting the window, plunging 5 stories, breaking his back and paralyzing him from the waist down. As Scott lies unconscious on the ledge, Selinski has hit the ground running. With the noise from Scott's fall, Hugo Solinsky is noticed missing within minutes. The prison goes into high alert, and a massive manhunt swings into action. Authorities know they must catch this alleged serial killer before the situation spirals out of control. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, October 2003. Accused serial killer Hugo Solinsky is on the run.
A dangerous murder suspect is on the loose this morning after escaping from a Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania jail. Hugo Solinsky is accused of killing 2 of the 5 people whose bodies were found buried in his backyard. On Friday, he removed a jailhouse window and climbed down a rope made of bed sheets.
I'm sitting there watching TV. I'm just shaking my head thinking, if anybody could do this, it would be Mr. Solinsky.
I think people were afraid, and I think that people were locking their doors when he escaped. But I also think that there was sort of this Houdini-type quality about him where people were almost cheering him on.
To evade search dogs, he wades up the Susquehanna River. When he's sure the coast is clear, he climbs onto the bank, then jogs for over an hour to reach his aunt's home.
She took him in, and he ended up staying there overnight through the next day, hiding upstairs in one of her bedrooms.
As darkness falls, Hugo disappears again into the countryside. The manhunt intensifies. Then, in an ironic twist, considering Solinsky's murderous reputation, the public begins to get behind him.
I think that a lot of women find Hugo attractive, but I think that also a lot of women find him charismatic. Hugo wants to talk, and he uses the camera as a way to get his message out.
Yeah, I was a reporter for 10 years. Not once before that, not once after that, did I ever hear girls gawk at a homicide suspect like they did for him.
A local radio station started paying tribute to Hugo.
Food delis were naming sandwiches after him. I mean, it was really bizarre.
Hugo Solinsky's attorney, Demetrius Fanek, takes it upon himself to try and persuade Hugo to give himself up.
Hugo, I need you to call me. Whatever precipitated this event on Friday, it certainly is not in your best interest. People care for you. They fear for your safety. If you call me, I believe I could certainly arrange for an amicable resolution to this ordeal.
Surprisingly, Solinsky does just that.
Hugo? Where are you? He asked me if I truly thought that I had a chance to win his case. And I told him that I thought I could. And he said, okay, I'm going to surrender, but we're going to do it on my terms. Okay, I will do my best to do that. You need to stay put.
His terms of surrender are that just his lawyer and 2 cops he trusts come to his home.
It was a little disbelief that all of a sudden he wanted to surrender.
Fearing that they are driving into a trap, the police exercise extreme caution.
As the police car and my car went up his driveway, it was dark, and we proceeded to the house. In the meantime, Hugo wrote a note to his girlfriend, Tina Strom, which simply said, Tina, I love you more than life itself. Don't ever forget that. Lit a cigarette, grabbed a can of beer, and walked out the back door to surrender.
Put your hands behind your back, interlace your fingers behind your head. All right?
Authorities are confused about why Solinsky gave up so easily.
There's all sorts of rumors. Rumors from he had money buried all over that he had to go and dig up, to there was evidence he had to destroy, to there was witnesses he had to see, to he just missed his girlfriend.
I think it adds to the mystery of the Hugo story. Where was Hugo? What did he do, and why did he so desperately want to get out?
Some reporter yelled to him, "Why did you surrender?" And in an instant, his remark was, "I wouldn't miss this trial for anything in the world."
On the loose or in custody, Solinsky continues to capture the public's imagination.
When his trial came up, high school girls waiting to get in, sitting in the front row, line the day that his verdict came back. There was a line wrapped around a waiting line to get in.
Solinsky appeared to soak up the adulation.
I think he loved it then, and I think he still loves it now. When I would go and speak to him in the jail, Hugo would always say, "Well, do people still talk about me? And am I still in the newspapers? And what are people saying? What are people feeling about me?"
Oh, they said you killed 2 drug dealers in cold blood?
On the 2 charges of murder, Hugo Solinsky was found not guilty.
People were completely shocked. There were burned bones in garbage bags on his property, and he was found not guilty.
But in July 2009, Solinsky was convicted and sentenced to 32 to 65 years behind bars for kidnapping and robbery. Charges for the escape are still pending. Coming up, a dangerous gang of murderers attempts a high-risk escape. The Isle of Wight, 1995, 2 miles off the south coast of England, home to maximum security Parkhurst Prison. 100 prison officers guard 200 violent murderers, psychotics, and sociopaths.
Prisoners who were problems to control, prisoners who were problems to other staff or a threat to other inmates, they would all be sent to Parkhurst. It literally was the end of the line.
The end of the line means living hard behind walls topped with razor wire. Cages within cages, monitored by electronic surveillance 24 hours a day.
Never has anyone got out from behind the walls of Parkhurst.
But 3 dangerous prisoners have a plan. Muscle man Andrew Rogers, jailed for beating a night watchman to death with a crowbar, sentenced to life. Keith Rose, jailed for shooting dead a millionaire's wife in an attempted kidnap, sentenced to life. And 25-year-old sociopath Matthew Williams, jailed for trying to poison his parents and planting a lethal nail bomb in a shopping center, sentenced to life. Despite being the youngest by 20 years, Williams is the mastermind behind their escape plan.
To break out of Parkhurst, you need a lot of planning, you need a lot of resources, and you need a lot of luck.
As a cunning sociopath, Williams acts the role of model prisoner. He's allowed to work under supervision in the prison metal shop.
Produced works that were like plant pot stands or other bits and pieces that they might want to make for themselves or for their families.
In the workshop, Williams and Rose began building a sculpture for the prison grounds.
It appeared to be something like an abstract snake. It was sectional, but if it was bolted together in a different way, you could actually use it as a ladder and to escape the wall.
And each individual part, we believe, was hidden in different parts of the workshop so that it would not arouse suspicion from anybody just looking at it. It would just be a piece of welded metal.
To get to the wall, the gang will need to make or steal a skeleton key that opens a string of doors. And that key is literally staring them in the face.
We had one member of staff at the time whose way of dealing with inmates would be to admonish them waving his keys in front of the face. And it's not a very good thing to be able to do, and we did tell him several times not to do that.
One of the 3 prisoners had a photographic memory and was able to memorise that key and make it in the prison workshop by slow degrees.
Williams, Rose, and Rogers now have a ladder and a skeleton key. And on the 3rd of January, when the gang are working out in the gym, the breakout is go. As the class finishes, the plan swings into action.
Come on, Lana. Let's go. Let's go. Go around. Down here.
4 prisoners start a fight. And as the guards are distracted, Williams, Rose, and Rogers duck out of sight.
When the gym party was leaving, the 3 inmates had already hidden themselves within the gymnasium.
At 5:45 p.m., the gym instructor locks the door behind him.
Once they ascertained that there was nobody around, that's when they would have made their escape bid.
With only 2 hours until the next head count, the gang must retrieve their ladder and climb over the wall undetected. But first, they must put their homemade skeleton key to the test. And it works. Williams, Rogers, and Rose now head to pick up the escape ladder hidden in the metal shop.
When they broke into the metal workshop, they collected together all the separate items that went together to make the ladder used in the escape. Also secured would be some bolt cutters, and including a hose pipe, which they needed to get over the outer fence.
After leaving the metal shop, they began to cut their way through the first perimeter fence.
The hole only has to be big enough for them to get through. It doesn't have to be huge. And then they're through into the sterile area. Then they would assemble the ladder, put it up against the prison wall, and begin to make their escape over the top.
3 dangerous prisoners, 2 of them convicted murderers, are on the run after breaking out of Parkhurst Prison on the Isle of Wight.
This was a brilliant escape. There's no other way to describe it. There's a grudging respect from staff that they were able to put together all the separate elements, including a big slice of luck.
The gang has pulled off the first escape from Parkhurst Prison in 100 years, but they are now trapped on the Isle of Wight, surrounded on all sides by the English Channel. The Isle of Wight on the south coast of England. Sociopathic bomber Matthew Williams and murderers Andrew Rogers and Heath Rose are on the run after breaking out of maximum security Parkhurst Prison.
Once they were out, they went to a local telephone box and telephoned for a taxi. In the phone box, we believe, was hidden a sum of money, which was put there by a fourth party, who I don't know if we've actually found out who it was.
They take the taxi to an airport on the other side of the island.
Rose was a qualified pilot, and therefore he could fly a plane, and a light plane with 3 men in it would easily get from the island to the continent in about half an hour at the outside. And if it keeps below radar, it's unlikely to be spotted.
But both aircraft parked at the airport have dead batteries, and Rose can't get them started. The gang is trapped on the island.
Officers have today been checking outlying areas and empty buildings and asking people if they've seen anything suspicious.
The island was very tense at the time of the escape, and we got 3 high-profile inmates in for murder, kidnapping. They have a lot of potential. A lot of people on the island were worried about the fact that these 3 inmates had got out and were possibly still on the island.
Last night was quite frightening, yeah. Kept going down and double-checking all the doors.
Walked around the town this morning. You don't know who you're walking around with. They're supposed to be in civilian clothes.
Ferries, the most popular form of transport to and from the island, were being watched closely. Officers were checking cars on the island and making house-to-house inquiries, as well as advising people that the 3 escapees are extremely dangerous.
No boats had been taken or anything like that, so we knew these 3 were out and about somewhere on the island.
Hi, we're just checking to make sure that you've seen the news of it.
They were actually hiding in a garden shed in quite a busy suburb of Ryde on a main road down the bottom of the garden. Unknown to the woman, they were living there for 4 days, just popping out for fish and chips at night, 50 yards away from the police station.
Cheers.
After 5 days of living on the run and thinking the manhunt has finally been scaled down, the gang makes a break for the ferry.
Message came over the radio that 3 likely suspects had been spotted walking along Lushington Hill, at which point we turned left down that road and went ahead of the 3 men, who realised that we were a police vehicle, and then they scattered.
Police, many of them armed, converged on a roundabout 2 miles from Parkhurst Jail after an off-duty prison officer reported seeing 3 men he recognised.
I told him, "Stop, police," and he stopped. The other one, Williams, kept running, and one of my colleagues ran after him.
Rose I interpreted, thought that I had a gun. He dropped to his knees, put his hands in front of me and said, "Please, don't shoot, don't shoot."
Andrew, Roger and Keith Rose were arrested immediately, offering no resistance, telling police that they thought the search had been called off.
But mastermind Matthew Williams takes off into the darkness.
When he had run from us, he had run about another mile crossing country, but of course dogs had been called in and they're experts at tracking. Williams, I suppose it's in fear, in panic, just ran straight into the water, and Tony and his dog went in after him.
I grabbed hold of the guy, turned him. I was concerned where his hands were. I pushed him to the bank, made sure his hands were inside at all times, held him there. Jim passed me some handcuffs, pulled his arms around me, handcuffed him, and then dragged him out of the water. But it was good. It was a nice feeling. We got a guy that needs to be caught.
Williams, Rogers, and Rose went back to serving their life sentences and were given an extra 2 years for the escape.
So it was policeman 3 and prisoners 0, on the score sheet. That was it.